Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing Vampyr on the GeForce GTX 1050 Ti. For performance monitoring, I'll be using CAM. If you want to download the software, there's a link down in the description. So Vampyr, I'll be doing 1080p, 900p and 1440p. To skip none of those sections of the video, check the description below. So first of all, I'll show you the G4560 on both 1080p and 900p, targeting 60 frames per second, and I unlock the frame rate. I'll talk more about that later in the video, but the uncapped frame rates make the CPU do more work. So at 900p, for some reason on the G4560 I got some stutters, especially while being attacked in combat. Kinda random if you ask me. It happened a couple times in the video, then when I played on my own it still happened, but it was random, it wasn't in the same places. But yeah, on the G4560 I got some drops below 60 frames per second compared with the i3-8100. It wasn't perfect on the i3 either, but on the G4560 it felt less consistent, which makes sense. It has 2 cores and 4 threads instead of 4 like the i3. Then I switched to the i3-8100 and I show you 2 configurations for 1080p. First, the same one I show you on the G4560, targeting 50 to 60 frames per second, at least in the combat parts. Then I just crank it up to the max, except in anti-aliasing, which I kept on FXAA. Then I switched to 900p and I show you pretty much the maximum settings once again, since on that one we have a lot of GPU power to spare. And finally at 1440p I show you just one configuration, because between the highest and the lowest settings there is not a huge performance difference. So we just target over 30 frames per second, because at the lowest we get 40 to 50, and at the settings that I show you you get 30 to 40 something. And now I'm going to talk to you about the options menu and my experience testing this game. This game was made using Unreal Engine 4, so you have the usual options in the options menu plus some extra stuff. Honestly, TXAA wasn't as big of a hit as I expected, so if you have some GPU power to spare, I recommend you use it. It might make the game look a little bit blurrier, but it hides the aliasing quite well compared to FXAA. Then if you want the easiest boost in performance, just lower FX quality from ultra to medium. That usually gives you the best performance boost of all of the options. And if you want a little more frames there, just lower post-process to high, view distance to high and shadows to medium. Other than that, there's not much else that you can do to improve the frame rate significantly, so those are the options that I recommend lowering in the first place. That's it about the options menu. There is not much to discuss, because between the highest and the lowest settings there is not a huge performance difference, and the visual difference isn't huge either. And well, about the performance, the game seems to be running quite well, but I found some things to talk about. First of all, it's capped at 62 frames per second. You can unlock the frame rate by just following the instructions down in the description, but I understand why the developers put that 62 FPS cap. It's for the game to feel more stable overall. But some things that I have to mention are that in the open areas of the game there are not a ton of them. For example, in the hospital area that I'm just benchmarking, when you go outside of the hospital and look into the hospital itself where all the detail is present, that's where I see the frame rate suffer. Even on higher end hardware, drops into the mid 40s, sometimes lower 50s. So it seems to be a thing with the game on how it loads different stuff. And there are also some sudden drops in the frame rate when you're just traveling through the map, especially the hospital. It just seems to be the game loading assets. So if you have something worse than an i3-8100 or Ryzen 3 1200, you can usually expect a little more stutter than shown in the video. And on some of my videos I tested the G4560, and on that one I noticed some extra stutter. As I was saying, it wasn't unplayable by any means, but sometimes while fighting you can get some stutters when you're being attacked. It's kinda random, but it can happen with 2 core 4 thread CPUs. So yeah, I expect this game to run pretty well. So I recommend leaving the frame rate cap in place unless you have something better than an i3-8100. So just expect some fluctuations in the frame rate, especially in the bigger maps in the game, just very specific parts of the game. Other than that, it's very smooth, so there's not much of a problem with just combat. Performance there is quite nice. But yeah guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you keep enjoying the video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
That's all you can do. He's mine! I'll take it!
At least that mistress of the dark has stopped following me.
Watch the leech, boys! You're mine! Shit! I'll kill it! I'll take its head! You're mine! Kill it all you deserve!
Patients are not fools. They know we are overwhelmed.